There's a story of a famous scholar, one of the great scholars that the Jewish people have had in recent times. His name was Rabbi Rosen, Rabbi Yossi Rosen, Rabbi Yossi Rosen. He was a rabbi in the city of Dvinsk. Dvinsk, I guess, is Lithuania, for many years. During the years that he was in Rav, it became Poland and Russia and Latvia intermittently. He was at Rav for a very long time. It was an incredible mind. In his lifetime, he was a legend. He was one of those. He passed away in 1936. In his lifetime, in other words, when he lived, the great rabbis of his era saw him as head and shoulders above them. He was in a different level altogether. Our rebbe, the rebbe, if you can say this, saw him as his personal teacher in Talmud. He would quote him more than any other recent authority of Talmud. He's known by the name of the city which he was born. The genius of Rogachev, the Rogachever Goen. He was a rabbi in Dvinsk, but he was born in Rogachev. I don't know where these cities are. You'll have to forgive me for that. He was an extraordinary mind. Very, very, had a fantastic memory. Very, very probing. He remembered everything, but he also was very deep and analytical, unbelievably creative. And he developed a philosophical approach to Talmud. The Rebbe would say that he invented a new approach to how you should study Gemara. Very, very philosophical, based on philosophical principles, which he presents in his voluminous writings. He wrote extensively, but his style of writing is very cryptic. It's almost like code. He was a fantastic mind, an incredible mind. And he was an agitated man. He was not a calm, collected, sweet rabbi. That wasn't his thing. He was a genius. And he would have loved to have been surrounded by other geniuses with whom he could spar. He didn't mind losing an argument. He had an issue with dumbbells, and he was quite forthright about what he thought of people who were unintelligent. And you could have an IQ of 150 and he would think of you as an idiot. He was very, very bright. And people describe him with a table full of books, just open books, and him running around the books, just running, stopping and poking his head into one book. That's how his mind worked very quickly. And the whole Torah to him was a piece of art. And he put it all together in this very original approach that he had, and he drew out of it little images, little sketches for us to enjoy when we study his writings, which are not easy to study, but very creative, very original. But the point I'm trying to make from this whole introduction is that Rogachev was not the kind of fellow you would ever see sitting still. He was always on the move. He was running. He would be in a shul. He was pacing. He was in his house. He was circling the table. He was so much energy in this man. He couldn't sit still. But he was a genius. He was a great mind. And when he spoke, he was very patient. His writing is very cryptic, but his style of speech was very understandable. So a young yeshiva boy, if I understand the story correctly, it's someone who was actually still alive. He's over 100 today. Rabbi Mendel Morozov walks into a shul late on a Shabbos afternoon in Leningrad. Leningrad, either the Shabbos goes so late that it goes till Sunday morning, or Shabbos is so short, by 2 p.m, it's over. And the Rogachev is alone in shul. And he's sitting uncharacteristically still. He's very still, which he never was. He was always moving around. And this young boy, this Mendel, who was then about 9 or 10 years old, is intrigued by the Rogachev sitting alone in a shul, very still, concentrating on something. Almost like a little kid is watching a spider climb up its little thread. And he walks over to the Rogachev, and he's sitting with a pocket watch, with a little pocket watch, a gold pocket watch. People used to use pocket watches in those days. And he's counting off the seconds. You know how the second handle turns? There's 2 types of second hands. You have a second hand that keeps on moving, and you have the one that goes tick, tick, tick. It counts. Every second is a distinct unit of time. And he's looking at this watch and he's counting the seconds and he's counting away. And it seemed so out of character. What's he doing? Little children count seconds. The Rogatchover had no patience for people who thought they had great ideas. And here he is counting seconds on the clock. And he's completely oblivious. He doesn't see that there's a little boy behind him watching this great rabbi sit there counting seconds. Anyway, eventually he's counting seconds. Suddenly he hears him say, "Ois, finished." He closes the watch and he stands up and he walks away. What he was doing was counting the seconds till the end of Shabbos. Because one of his obsessions, this genius of Rogatchover, one of his obsessions, one of the things as a Talmudist, as a scholar, which intrigued him and it made him nuts, was time. Time is not something that we fill with events, with experiences. Time has energy. And in Jewish law, and in Jewish philosophy, Shabbos is a different kind of time than Friday, and a different kind of time than Sunday. Shabbos, you make Kiddush. But if you didn't make Kiddush Shabbos, Shabbos is going to happen anyway. There's 24 hours every seventh day that's holy. And to this great mind, the idea that a second hand on a clock, on a watch, ticks, and all of a sudden there's a different energy than a second before, without anybody doing anything, fascinated him. He was very, very intrigued by that prospect. Nobody does anything. They turn a page on a calendar, the handle on the clock moves, and there's a new energy, there's a new time. But this is very much a part of Yiddishkeit. It's a part of our religion and our belief system and how we live on a philosophical level. That time is made up of pieces. We don't believe that time is a continuum. This is not a time to have a philosophical conversation. It's certainly not a time to discuss what science thinks about these ideas. But there's an argument to say that there's no such thing as time. Only clocks, right? If you are a fruit fly that has a life expectancy of 48 hours, an hour of our time is a year, right? If you are a tree that lives 4,000 years, so 40 years, a year is a couple of days. There's a relativism to time. And there's an argument that time is how much of it you have to spend, how quickly you move, how you use your time. But of course we don't believe that. Nobody believes that. If you're sensitive, you're understanding. Time is an entity. It's a thing. It's a thing unto itself. And in Jewish thought, just like space is made up of units, right? There's a Beis Hamikdash. There's a holy temple. It was built on Har Moriah, the Mount Moriah. It's a holy space. It's not a holy space because the Bet HaMikdash was built there. The Bet HaMikdash was built there because it's a holy space. When God created the world, He destined that space to be holy. The Rebbe in his writings makes a very powerful argument. He says when Jewish people put up a shul, any place in the world, when Jewish people put up a shul, any place in the world, over the course of 3,000 years, that space, that geography, that piece of ground, that piece of earth, was originally a piece of the land that was destined for the Beis HaMikdash. It's holy space. And the divine hand, the Hashgacha Olyona, the hand of God, leads people to erect a holy house, a sanctuary on a spot, because the space has a sanctity. And it says in the holy books that when Mashiach comes, the space itself of the shuls, of the special shuls, not every local mom and pop, but the shuls of great significance are going to be physically attached to the Beis HaMikdash because they're in essence a part of the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, there's holy space. So there's holy time. Shabbos isn't holy because we make Kiddush. We make Kiddush because it's holy. It's a holy day. And it has a unique energy associated with Shabbos. And the same is true with Yom Tov. We have a variety of different holidays. And every holiday, the time has an energy. Right? Yom Tov is different than Shabbos. Yom Tif is different than Shabbos. Shabbos, God sanctifies. Yom Tif, we sanctify. And you see it in the Kiddush. I don't want to put you all to sleep. I'll do that in an hour. But in the meantime, I want to keep you awake. Yeah. You could see it in the actual Kiddush. That on Yom Tif, you don't say, Baruch atah Hashem Mekadesh. Thank God for sanctifying the holiday. You say, thank God for sanctifying the Jew. Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. On Yom Tov, you say He sanctifies the Jewish people who sanctify the Chag. Shabbat, on Shabbos, Mekadesh Shabbat. God sanctifies Shabbos. We sanctify Yom Tov. But Yom Tov also is a special time. In other words, the day of Yom Tov, the week of Yom Tov. In this case, it's 8 or 9 days. We live in Chutz La'aretz, outside of the Holy Land. They have an extra day of Yom Tov. These days are special. They're not special because of what we do. We do what we do because they're special. It's special time. There's an energy. It's an opportunity. There's an energy. And when you understand it that way, when you understand the idea that certain days have special energy, you understand, in the words of the Talmud, the language of the Gemara, Ovar zmanei batal karbonei. You missed the day, the opportunity is gone. You had a day, you had a Shabbos. Shabbos is a holy day. You took advantage of Shabbos. You benefit from what Shabbos brings, or what Shabbos makes available, or what Shabbos makes possible. You have a sukkah, Chag HaSukkos. If you take advantage of what sukkah offers, it's an incredible opportunity. You can't make sukkahs in February. It's not going to work. You can't make Pesach in October or November. It's not going to work because there is a time. God created a specific time with a special energy associated with a specific gift. And we have a bunch of holidays. Jews have got a lot of holidays, right? If you know anything about Jewish history, whenever the Goyim complained that we had too many holidays, they gave us a new one. Haman Rasha. You heard of Haman? Yeah, you heard of Haman, yeah? He complained that the Jews are never working. They're a bunch of lazy, it's an old complaint. It's not a new one. The Jews are always on vacation. Here, there's Pesach, there's Shavuos, there's Sukkot. So Haman comes to Achashverosh and says, these Jews, you employ them, you give them a job. He has a whole list of days they can't come in. And he wants you not to include it in his paid vacation. He wants to have it extra because it's because of religion. And otherwise he's going to take you to court and accuse you of religious persecution and discrimination, which is like all the very bad things in America these days. So Haman complains to Achashverosh, the Jews never worked, there were a bunch of holidays. So God says, Haman, you just gave us another one, another day off. Put him, you understand? Jews have a lot of holidays, but every holiday is a day. It's a time. And the time has an energy, it has a life. But not all the holidays have the same life. Every holiday has a theme, a primary theme, a secondary theme. And every holiday is connected to a particular opportunity, to a particular possibility. Right? During the course of the year, we go through a whole bunch of stuff. The following year, repeat it again and again, right? Pesach is a season of freedom. Freedom. And, freedom is like health, You don't feel your body. Who pays attention to health until someone gets sick? Right? But health is a big one, yeah? Freedom is huge. Freedom is huge. You don't think about freedom until it's challenged. The truth of the matter is, the greatest challenge to our freedom is our Yetzer Hara. You know that, right? The Yetzer Hara. Rabbi, do they have a Yetzer Hara in New Jersey?
They call it animal soul.
The animal soul, okay. The animal soul is, I get it. The animal soul is the greatest obstacle to freedom. Why? Because what does it mean to be free? This is my one question test. What does it mean to be free? Anybody know what it means to be free? You have to give me my answer. I'm sure there's 101 answers, but you got to come up with mine. Freedom means the ability to tell yourself to do something and actually do it 100% of the time. I'll say it again. Freedom means the ability to tell me, not to tell you, to tell myself, tomorrow you're getting up at 6, and to actually get up 100% of the time. If I tell myself to do things and I have no ability to follow what I tell myself, I'm a prisoner. Now, no one's holding me.
So you call it discipline.
Pardon me?
So freedom is discipline.
No, it's mastery. You see, discipline has a connotation that's negative. Mastery of self. Being free means I own me. I own me. I have a house. Nobody can step in my house. I own myself. I can do with myself as I wish. And if I cannot do as a wish because of temptation, because of fear, because of phobia, whatever the case is, then I'm not free. I'm a prisoner. And sometimes I'm not a prisoner to anything that I can take to court and say, because I'm a prisoner to myself, my own weakness, my own bad habits, and so on. So Pesach is a Yom Tif, is a time where we don't remember freedom. We celebrate freedom. We live freedom. And of course the idea is, it's a special time to gain some more freedom. Shavuot, is God gave us the Torah. It's a holiday celebrating the Torah, whatever that involves. Sukkot has two themes. Sukkot has two big ideas. The holiday of Sukkot is a time, there's an energy available, the time of Sukkot, for two things. Unity and joy. The two energies that Sukkot represents in essence. In other words, these are days that I can affect in my life. I can do things for me that I couldn't do yesterday and I won't be able to do tomorrow because today is special in these two arenas, unity and joy. So we have two topics on the table. We can talk about two things. We can talk about joy and we can talk about unity. I'm going to talk about unity first. But we'll first sing a nigun, okay? Because I want you to stay awake. And we'll say l'chaim. And I'll talk about unity. I'll try to do it not too long, because I do want to dedicate most of the conversation to joy. But I want to touch on the idea of unity, what it means, and how it relates to us in our own practical lives. So say l'chaim, if you don't mind drinking with me. L'chaim l'evracha, Tei Machon, and Agut Mayid. L'chaim l'evracha. And so we have two unities. You have two unities of Sukkot. The first unity of Sukkot is the Lulav. The Lulav, Esek, Hadasim, Aravis. You all know what that is. And I'm sure the rabbi has shared with you the standard. It's a medrash actually originally that compares the Lulav and the Esek, the Hadas and Arav, to different kinds of Jews. The Esek is a Jew, let's say it this way, he's successful in his relationship with God and his relationship with man. The Arava is no good at anything. He's there. He's one of us. He's not proficient in Torah study. He's not good at doing mitzvahs, good deeds. He's just tasteless. And in between you have the Hadasim and the Lulav. Hadasim have a wonderful smell, but I don't know if you ever tried eating one. I tried as a kid. When they told me it doesn't taste good, I tried. It doesn't taste good. And the Lulav, which produces palm dates, which taste good if they're not... All the dates I've come across in America look like they need to be cooking for a couple of more weeks. But when dates are ripe, they actually taste wonderfully, have a good taste, and have no smell. So there's four categories of Jews. And we incorporate all four into the Daled Minim, into the four species. And the interesting thing is, if you have Rashi Tefillin and not Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, yeah? If you have Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, not Rashi Tefillin, what do? You do what you have. What if you have a Lulav and no Esrik? What if you have a Lulav and Esrik and a Dasim and no Aravas? If you don't have all four kinds, you have nothing. When it comes to the Lulav, it's either a package or it's not a package. If you have every kind of Jew represented, then you can do the mitzvah. If you're missing one category of Jew, one of the four species, it's no good. Now, first of all, on a very practical note, very down-to-earth note, the reason for the sukkah, which is made of basically of waste, and this is expensive waste, but in the Talmudic terminology, the schach is called pshelas gerim v'yekef. When you harvest, when you collect your food stuff from the field, you eat it, right? But there's a lot of stuff you can't eat, like the husks and the straw and the branches. So from the waste of the food products, you're supposed to make schach. Today people are making a living out of the waste products of food. But technically that's what it is. Sukkot is a season to celebrate the harvest. Parnasa, food, what we eat. That's why there's so much about water on Sukkot also. And the four kinds are representative of all different types of things that grow, from which people make a living. This is what either we eat it directly or we sell it and make a parnasa. So that's really on the most elementary level, the entry level, the lowest level. The idea of sukkahs and the idea of the 4 kinds is that it represents all the various different things that people use to sustain themselves, to eat, to keep themselves alive. So the Lulav represents a unity, but it's a complex unity. It's a complex unity because you have different types. You can't just have one type. If you want something to be whole and healthy and successful, you need every type. If you have only one type, if you neutralize the differences between one component and another component, it isn't healthy. The lulav works because you have aravas, and because you have a lulav, and because you have a nesrig, and because you have hadassim. If you're going to have only hadassim, the esrog seems to be the favorite of the 4 because he has every positive attribute. If you take 4 esregim and shake it, it's nothing. It's expensive, but it's not a mitzvah. If you want to do a mitzvah, you need 1 esrog, you need 1 lulav, you need 2 aravas, and a minimum of 3 hadassim. You can only do the mitzvah with variety, right? Think about it in terms of biology. What makes a human being? 1 head, 1 heart, 1 set of lungs. Correct? If a person has 2 heads, now you would think if the head has the brain, and the brain is the source of intelligence, and the nervous system, and all those other things, if you have 2 heads, it's like having a supercomputer. It's not the way it works. The halacha says, and reality teaches us, kol yeser kenotl, a person who has 2 heads is considered as if he has no head. Because when you have more than 1 limb, more than 1 organ that is life-sustaining, you take off 2. If a person is born with 2 hearts, if an animal is born with 2 hearts, it's considered treif. Because you don't say he has an extra heart. The extra heart takes away 2. He has no heart. A healthy body has a variety of different components. And it's only healthy if every single part contributes what it was designed to contribute. The head is much more important than the feet, which can't live without feet. The heart is the most important organ in the body, in a way. 2 hearts is not good. If a person has 3 arms, you would imagine 3 arms, where would you put it? Where would you hang it? But it's an extra appendage. It's not the way it works. We are designed precisely. And the nature of this design is that it's perfect only when it's diverse, when it's various, when it's many different things that contribute to a precise system. What's the sign of a healthy community? What's the sign of a healthy civilization? The sign of a healthy community is that every single member is needed. There's no such thing as vestigial, You can do without. I used to think in the 19th century that there are all of these pieces of our plumbing that are there from our evolutionary past. But as time passed, all of a sudden those pieces of plumbing, we discovered their uses, right? And they got down to the tonsils, what do they call them? There's another word for it. The adenoids, and now they're not so quick to take them out either. The adenoids also serve a purpose. Every piece of our body contributes to what we are. You take away one, everything suffers. And in a community, it's the same way. If you have a community, it's an old story that Chaim Weizmann, who was the president of Israel, met, I don't know how that's possible. I think it was Chaim Weizmann, met Eisenhower. But Chaim Weizmann was not the president. Whatever, he was a big macher. And he met Eisenhower. So Eisenhower says to Weizmann, I'm the president of a 200 million citizens. So Weizmann says, I'm the president of a 2 million presidents. You understand? That in a community, everybody serves a purpose. If everybody's got an opinion, if everybody's an expert, if everybody has to do things their way, that community is not a community. It's a disaster. It's a chaos. If you manage to elect a leader, and that leader is respected and trusted and can do what he needs to do, the people who are not leaders are not less because of it, they're more because of it. A leader can't do everything. A leader fills a certain role. He needs arms, he needs legs, he needs fingers, he needs toes, he needs many different contributors. That's why when you have dissent, when you have division, when people don't get along, politics is a luxury that we can ill afford, What's politics? People not joining together for petty reasons. My honor wasn't particularly served. I didn't get the position I thought I should have gotten. All these kinds of things. is it true? It probably is true. If you feel slighted, then you probably were slighted. But what's the cost? So what, right? The idea that people are not going to get along or are not going to cooperate with one another because of ego or because of other, relatively speaking, trivial considerations, it's very costly. Why? Because we need each other. That's the nature of a human being. In a community, everybody needs everybody. And the idea that I can afford not to get along with him, or I can afford to split the community in two and we'll become two communities, it's usually not true. And it's usually very, very destructive. Why? Because we need each other. And we don't all do the same thing. There's one, in halachic terms, a community of any side needs to have a minimum of 120 members. And there's a whole list of requirements. You have to have a doctor, and you have to have a school teacher, and you have to have members of a court, a whole list of minimums. You can't live in a community unless you have this, and this. We have 120 doctors, so that's very wonderful, but it's not a community. Why? You don't need that many. Everybody has to serve a purpose. And a healthy community, every single person is needed and contributes. And the same is true in the human body, and the same is true in the Jewish body, in the collective Jew. The message of Achdus, the message of Jewish unity, of the Lulav, is that we're different. And we all are important. We all contribute. We all do what we can. Hashem did not make us all the same, because that's not what He wants. Hashem created us all distinct and various, because we bring to the table what only we can give. And we all matter. We're all important. And Jewish unity means that we recognize that. Jews getting along, people getting along, a family. What does it take to have politics? A person with a little paranoia, that's politics already. Right? Some people can have arguments with themselves, but that's a special category. But two people, you can have all kinds of disagreements. How often does it happen that a husband and a wife, the wife did something or didn't do something, and the husband imagined it. He doesn't want to broach it in case he's imagining it, but at the same time he's convinced that his wife was, I don't know, she ignored him one day in the store, and he's walking around 6 months with this terrible feeling of dissatisfaction. And what happened? She lost her glasses. She didn't see him. All kinds of silly things get in the way of unity. And that's really the message of the four kinds. We're different. And only when you bring us together in a unified way do we work. It's only a mitzvah if you have all four. And it's a serious lesson. It's a very, very serious challenge, because people in general, Jews in particular, in a state of crisis, we're all wonderful. If life's normal, we can't stand each other's guts. To get along is very, very important. To appreciate the need for another person. To appreciate the role we play in our community is very, very important. To collaborate, to cooperate, to be one. That's the story. And yes, at the base of this unity is God. What does God have to do with unity? Why isn't God a social order, a social norm? It is a social norm. How does God get involved in people getting along in a community? And the answer is, people cannot get along unless they have a little humility. We're not going to get along unless we can get over ourselves a little bit. And the more we get over ourselves, the longer we'll live, and the happier we'll be, and the better we'll be, and the more liked we'll be. And that humility comes from God. Our ability to get past ourselves is because we recognize that I am the center of the universe. I mean, when I was a little boy, my mother told me the whole world was created for me. There's no question about it. But I'll let somebody else have some space. Also, I'll leave room for another fellow as well. I mean, that's where God comes in. God comes in because the basis for people getting along, for being peace in a community, and everybody being important and everybody contributing his or her part is a sense of something bigger than us. It's not about me. It's about the source of me, and the source of me is the source of you, and the source of her, and the source of him, and the source of her, the source of all of us, which is Hashem. And that sensitivity makes it possible for people to get past themselves. And listen, very easy to say, I know. I make a living giving speeches. And by the way, in case you don't know, I want to advertise. I have a website. I don't have that many cards, but I do have a few. I don't have any cards. I left my wallet home. Inside Chassidus.org. If you know who I am, you heard me before. Inside, INSIDE, Chassidus, please visit.
Inside, not insightful, but inside.
Right, please check it out. There's a lot of stuff. And,
inside
I certainly think so. If you like it, you'll tell all your friends. If you don't like it, you'll tell only me. Okay? In any case, what's going to be the same name? We're as we speak, Mitzvah Hashem, my site is becoming updated. There's people working on it. Be that as it may, but it's so easy to say. I make a living speech. I'm a teacher and I'm a public speaker. It's so easy to say. It's not easy to live. It's not even to live in a marital, two people, a husband and a wife. They love each other. They got married, and they don't always get along. Right? Bring children into the mix. More than one child, oh my gosh, right? You have only one kid, the kid's lonely. He has a brother or sister, someone to fight with the rest of his life. It's hard. It's very difficult to get along. It's very, very difficult to love and to accept. And the beginning is to let go. The beginning of this unity is to not take ourselves that seriously. And that's God. God is in the humility. God is in the ability that we have to say, you know what, I don't have to be right. It doesn't have to be my way. You want to do it your way, go right ahead, it's fine. And when for some people that's very difficult to do. For some people it's the most natural thing, right? I mean, I'm speaking here to, about 1.5 million of men and women. The good news is I don't know you. So if I insulted you, it was with no intentions, because I don't know you. Some people have a very easy time being agreeable, and some people take it very personally. They feel like if their position is not accepted or respected, they're being disrespected, dissed, as they say in the 90s. It's not that way. But everybody has their strengths, everybody has their weaknesses, and for a person for whom it's difficult to let go, a person for whom it's difficult to say, you know what, nicht wichtig. We got together, there were a list of people who were supposed to speak, came my time to speak, everyone was ready to go home. I said, you know what, I don't have to say anything, it's fine. For some people, it's nothing. And for another human being, that's huge. It's a great act of maturity. It's a great act of sacrifice. And Sukkot is the time. Sukkot is a special time. The Eibishter gave us this mitzvah, that it's an opportunity. We always can grow up. We always have an opportunity to get over ourselves and get past ourselves. But Sukkot, there's an energy in these days for being agreeable, for getting along with people. And there can be people we're very close to, there can be people we know casually, people we come across on the train, strangers. So there's a koyach for us, those of us who struggle with this, and even if those of us don't struggle, I would imagine at some level everybody struggles with this, to be bigger, to let more people into your sphere. You know how it works. There's two types of people. There are people in my sphere, people outside my sphere. How big is my sphere? If you're very, very paranoid, your sphere has room for only one, for yourself. If you're a little less paranoid, your sphere has room for you and your wife, or for you and your wife and your children. The more open you are, the healthier you are. The humbler you are, the more intelligent you are. The less afraid you are, the bigger your sphere. The biggest sphere is that it encompasses every human being on this earth. That it encompasses every Jew. That's not easy.
Every Jew or every human being?
Both. On one sphere it's every Jew, and on a bigger sphere it's every human being. And it ain't easy. It's not easy, but it's a challenge, and it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's a real part. That's what the Lulav really means. I mean, what the Lulav really means is that it should rain on time, and there should be enough to eat. And, when people have what they need, they don't think it's a big deal. When you don't have what you need, it's like health. Parnasa is like health. When you have it, you don't think about it. When you don't have it, you pull your hair out of your head. The first layer of sukkahs, the simplest reason we take a lulav and a esek and hadas and a rava, they represent every type of thing that grows on this earth, which God gave us. He gave us a living planet full of life. And that life feeds us, it nourishes us, and it nourishes itself, and it sustains itself, and it renews itself, and so forth and so on. So Sukkot is a time when we ask for parnasa, for abundance in sustenance. But on a different level, on a philosophical level, on a mystical level, the message of the Sukkah is a unity, but a complex unity. A complex unity means real different. Now we're going to say L'chaim and sing noch an Nigen. Yeah. A gut Jahr, a gesunde Jahr für jede Jiden und alle Jiden. Chol Mokem Shehem. Amen. Und a lichtike Jahr, a tzlachetike Jahr, a Yiddische Jahr. A Yiddische Jahr. But you know what it means, a successful year? Well, you know, what kind, I don't want to give you a long philosophical speech, but what kind of relationship do we have with Hashem? What kind of relationship with God? So there's a variety of possibilities. When life's tough and life's hard, we're either angry with Him, or we're desperately on our knees in front of Him. We need Him, yeah? When life's good, life is wonderful. So we don't pay that much attention. You know, I mean, God's very important, but I'm busy, you know. What we forget, what we fail to appreciate, is that God is not just a fellow who feeds us and clothes us and look after us. God is our spirit. God is the spirit of everything. And the spirit of everything is very important, very, very important. And it's very easy to neglect, it's very easy to ignore, it's very easy to deny, but it's very real. What's the spirit of a human being? The spirit of a human being is joy. The spirit of a human being is honesty. The spirit of a human being is courage. The spirit of a human being is principle. These are wonderful words. Like I said, I'm a public speaker, so I say all the right things. Now, to do them, everybody has their own, what they call in our culture, avoida, their own struggle, their own challenge, and none of us are perfect. Hashem is our neshama. Hashem is the place from which we have the strength to be positive and honest and giving. You know, what is the greatest thing a person can do for himself is give to somebody else, right? And when you're in a bad mood, you don't want to give to anybody else. And you say to God, when I'll be in a good mood, I'll give. And God says to you, when you'll be good, when you'll give, you'll be in a good mood. So it becomes an impasse. It's two Jews. What's the proof that God is Jewish? He's stubborn. That's the proof. Yeah. But that's what a good year is, that we're in touch with Hashem, not just because we're desperate. We're in touch with Hashem because we sense that He gives us the best of what we are. Really, the God in us is the best of what we are. And it's real. And if I was happy yesterday, it doesn't mean I'm going to be happy today. I got to make myself happy today. If I had the courage of my convictions to do the right thing and stand by principle yesterday, I got to do it again today, every day of my life. There's no habit. There's no habit. You don't get used to it. It doesn't become your regular way. Every day you need to draw strength. You're drawing strength from Hashem. That's what Hashem is. Hashem is the best of us. And He gives that to us all the time. And we need that. We have to value it, even when our life is in a very balanced state, when there's an equilibrium about ourselves. There's no highs and lows. And we don't clearly appreciate the need for something outside of ourselves to lean on. We should have that sensitivity. Anyway, I don't want to give you a God speech. I'll save that for another time. But there's another unity. Sukkot has another unity. And the second unity of Sukkot is the sukkah itself. But the unity of the sukkah is the opposite of the unity of the Lulav. Because what is a sukkah? You take a bunch of people and you put them inside one mitzvah. When does a human being ever fully surround himself with a mitzvah? What do we do in our lives where you'll say, from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet are surrounded by a mitzvah? The only example, besides for sukkah, is mikveh. That's the whole concept of mikveh. You're completely enveloped in the body of water that purifies. If one hair is outside of the water, it's no good. You have to be completely immersed in the mikveh. But you go alone to the mikveh. Everybody's their own water, you understand? Pardon me? A chuppah is a great example. But a chuppah is really more a custom than it is a law. A chuppah is a radiation of this. It's a symptom. Point well taken. It's a very, very good observation. A very legitimate observation. But sukkah. The Talmud says, what's the maximum size of a sukkah? How big can you make a sukkah? If you make it bigger than that, it's not a sukkah anymore. So there's a maximum height. The sukkah cannot be above, 32 or 33 feet. If it's above, pardon me? Under 30 feet, circa, approximately. And the reason for that is because when it's that tall, you won't notice that what's on top of you leaks. It's not a real ceiling. But the length and the breadth, The Talmud says you can put every single Jew in the world in one sukkah. There's no maximum. A sukkah doesn't have a maximum size. You can make a sukkah over all of New Jersey. One building with one set of walls and schach, and everybody shares. And in the sukkah, we're all together. But the sukkah is different than the lulav because the idea of the sukkah is that we're all the same. We're in the same mitzvah. In the four kinds, in the lulav and in the esrog and the hadas and the arava, we have to be different. We must be distinct. And we have to bring to the table our piece. And if you think you can live without your neighbor because you don't like his nose, you have no idea how impoverished you are because you turned your back on your neighbor. We all need each other. And that's the unity of the lulav. So in the lulav, there's an emphasis on difference, on interdependence that's based on diversity. Sukkah is a different concept. We're unified because our differences melt away. What separates us is not of issue. What binds us is what we share, what we have in common is the sukkah. So the sukkah is a different kind of unity than the unity of the lulav. So, as a social scientist, as a person who thinks, so which is a greater unity, the unity of the lulav or the unity of the sukkah? Huh? I would say, and I would imagine you agree with me, that the lulav is more sophisticated. The sukkah is very simple. Pardon me?
The other way around.
Okay, I said one thing and say the other things. Now we know that we're Jews. Okay, give me your reasoning.
Because even as an individual, you could contain, a lot of good things. Unless we can put ourselves together and, get along, then...
Right, but there's two concepts of getting along. One concept of getting along is that we each contribute something different. Another concept of getting along is that we're all the same. The lulav represents that we contribute different things, and that's the basis for the unity. The sukkah represents that we find a point in ourselves where there's no difference between one and the next. We share this mitzvah. God gave us a commandment to sit in a hut in weather which is not so agreeable perhaps, and we share the mitzvah and we de-emphasize. We don't underscore the difference. We emphasize we're the same. We're all one because of the mitzvah, and our contribution is equal.
Do we actually know the differences, or we all celebrate the mitzvah of being together, but being very different from each other?
Fair enough. So I think that's a good way to answer the question, right? It depends. If you go into the sukkah and you forget that you're a lulav or an esrog or a hadas and a hadas and an arava, then maybe the sukkah is not such a good idea. But if you remember your unique contribution, and at the same time you get past that, and you find what makes us all equal, then perhaps the unity of the sukkah is greater. In Hasidic philosophy, the way you would answer that question is you would say this: the sukkah is a higher unity, the lulav is a deeper unity. One of the most beautiful ideas that we have in Kabbalah is that we shake the lulav in the sukkah. Why? It's a long story, but the point is, our custom is that you shake the lulav and you bring it to your heart. When you shake the lulav, right, you do two things. You do this and you do this. So which is more important, the this or the this? It depends what kind of Jew you are. In most communities, the most important thing is this, because the concept of shaking the lulav is to fend off bad winds that come from the east and bad winds that come from the west, winds that can be destructive to the harvest. It's very practical, it's very down to earth. In Chabad, in Kabbalah, in Arizal, the important thing is that you bring it to your heart, because you're taking the 6 directions and you're bringing them into your heart. The lulav represents the personalization of the sukkah. In the sukkah, there's one mitzvah, we're all sitting in the same mitzvah, and our differences are dissolved by the presence of the mitzvah itself. The lulav is bringing it to my heart. That's how it's understood. But it's a different concept. It's a a very, very different concept.
Wasn't the sukkah, the whole idea of the sukkah is that it represents the guiding hand of God
through the desert
with the cloud, which in turn was the sukkah.
Right.
Represented the sukkah.
Correct.
Therefore, in effect, the sukkah is more representative of what we're supposed to have. And the containment of us within the sukkah is the containment of us within God. The esrog and lulav still have to be bound together by outside forces and so on and so forth.
I really want to think about what you just said.
It's all right.
You have to buy the book.
Well, let me give you an example where the sukkah, the unity of the sukkah comes to play, okay? You can save the life of one man who's a brilliant scholar, a brain surgeon. Or you could save the life of two people who are ordinary. What do you do? What do you do? Huh?
Ordinary.
It depends if you're on the Lulav side of the fence or the sukkah side of the fence. It's a serious question. Pardon me?
On the two people side of the fence.
How do you measure human beings? Do you measure human beings by their productivity? By what they can contribute to the civilization?
By their age.
How do we measure human beings?
Or is there an underlying measure of a human being which is so absolute, it's so immeasurable, that the simplest human being, ostensibly, on the deepest level, is equal to the most sophisticated and the most learned and the most scholarly? Because as you're saying, you cannot put a value on human life. If there's been an accident and you're suing in a court of law and the government is going to decide the financial value of a person, they're going to measure it by prospective years, by health, by age, and by productivity, which is really not measuring the value of the person.
As you said,
It's
it is inexactitude.
it's the functional measure of a person. You see, but this is what sukkah speaks to that's not in the lulav. The sukkah is a different concept of unity. It's a concept of unity that says we're exactly the same. We're not different at all. There is a point, there is a heart, there is an essence where we're precisely the same. And the value of one is the value of another without any distinction. So two simple people have greater value than one giant. When you identify human being on the deepest, and you understand quite well that you and I sit in this comfortable sukkah and the weather is fair and it's not raining. So this is a wonderful philosophical question. But in the history of the world, history of human beings, that question has been asked again and again and again in circumstances and conditions where people had to go to the deepest place in their own neshama to try and find the correct answer. And this is the unity of the sukkah. The unity of the sukkah is different than the lulav. It's not focusing on what we contribute. It's not defining anybody by what they bring to the table, the best person or the worst person. It gets at the very essence of a person. In we call it neshama, or in some context we call it yechida, the pinteliyid, the essence of what a person is, the essence of what a Jew is. You really can't measure one against the other. The sukkah speaks to this. The dalet minim, the four kinds, speaks to the fact that unity is complex. Everybody is necessary and everybody contributes. And if you live in a community and you say, I can do without so-and-so, you fail to realize how poor you are because of your error in thinking you don't need Moshe or Chaim or Bracha or Bela or Basha or Chana or Bracha. We're very interdependent. But the Sukkah speaks about the inherent, the innate, the value of a Yid, the value of a human being that's so absolute. One is equal to the whole group is equal to one. You cannot measure at all. And in Jewish law, one of those strange laws, that if there's a community of Jews that are under siege, I'll let you speak in a moment, yeah? If there's a community of Jews that are under siege, that means that the walls are surrounded. I mean, today you can't have a siege anymore because of airplanes, but once upon a time, you would lay a siege and you would surround the city, you'd cut off their food supply and their water supply and all the provisions, and you'd just starve them out. And it's a terrible condition, and the history of the world is filled with such events. And they say, we want one of you. And we're going to string them up. You give us one, the siege is over. And if you don't give us one, we're going to break the walls of the city and kill every single one of you. What's the law? The law is you're not allowed to give up one. You're not allowed. Now, somebody wants to volunteer, that's his business. Then it becomes a question, is he allowed to volunteer? But the community has not allowed to, one, in halachic terms, kol kavua kamechza mechza. When something is fixed, one is equal to everybody. Everybody is one is everybody. So unless, if you have a member of that community who's a criminal, who deserves to be punished anyway, so then there is an exception made under certain conditions. But if they say, give us one or we'll kill you all, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to give one. Why? Because you can't value a yid. You can't value a human life. This is the unity of the sukkah. So sukkahs is an interface of two different ideas that really don't fit together so easy. You have to figure out how to bring them together. The sukkah represents an idea. We were identifying the unity of the Jewish people by getting at the very essence, the very heart, the very pinta yid. I have been very passionately involved in the 6-Day War. Last spring, we had the 50th anniversary of the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War happened, I was 2.5. I don't remember the 6-Day War. But I've heard a lot about the 6th Day War. I've read about the 6th Day War. And so I spent a whole summer reading. The Rebbe started the Tefillin campaign literally 2 days before the 6th Day War started. And a whole summer into the following winter, the Rebbe talked about the 6th Day War in very, very passionate and very, very encouraging tone. But he saw the 6th Day War as a very special moment. Now, I don't know. I mean, Norman is Norman's grandfather, so he has to be at least 39 plus 39. But besides, I don't know how old you are. I don't know, you're my age, older, younger, whatever the case is. None of us are spring chickens anymore, right? We're all either on top of the hill or on the opposite side going down. So if you're 60, you remember the 6th Day War. The way I've heard the 6th Day War described by my father was born in Moscow. My father lived through the war. He hasn't had an easy life. So he experiences things, challenge, tragedy in a real way. I heard this from secular people, from many different people, from a number of different people who passionately described. All of a sudden, every Jew in the world felt like every other Jew is his brother. In the period leading up to the war, even during the war, and shortly thereafter. Then we got into politics very quickly. But there was a period of time that went on for several weeks, maybe several months, where there was an experience of Jewish solidarity. The only word I have to describe it, based on how it's been described to me, that was holy. It was sacred. It was magical. Jews all over the world, religious, secular, Sephardim, Ashkenazim, you name it, there was a sense of Jewish unity that you could touch. During the Holocaust, we didn't have such unity. During the Holocaust, which was, how could you compare? During the Holocaust, Jews were busy politicking. But in the weeks and months leading up to the 6th Day War, and during those 6 days, there was such a sense of Jewish solidarity. Again, if you were older than I, you remember. I've heard this described. That moment was magical. It was extraordinary. It was so special. The Rebbe argued, when the Rebbe discussed it, so people were explaining it, that this was the Jews' reaction to the Holocaust. We just had, literally, 20-some years ago, a Holocaust. 1 out of every 3 Jews were killed. And the fact is that the Jewish people who were not directly threatened by the Holocaust were apathetic. They didn't take it personally. So this was sort of a penitence. Jews were not going to not care this time. This is how people have told it to me, that because of the Holocaust, Jews woke up and they said, we're not sleeping through this one. Because the 6th Day War was a 6th-Day war.
Never again.
Pardon me. It could have been a bloodbath. It could have been so much worse than it was. It was a miracle. But the Rebbe, you know what the Rebbe said? The 6th-Day War and the solidarity the Jews experienced at that time was God sounding the shofar of Mashiach. That's what the Rebbe said. And he used these words. I'm saying in English, but he spoke in Yiddish. God has sounded the shofar of Mashiach. He's waiting to see how we respond. The idea that people feel so connected, even though nothing on the outside shows a connection at all. That's the sukkah. That's not the lulav. It goes to the very deepest definition of a yid, the deepest point in the Yiddish neshama. So it's a different concept of unity. And in sukkahs, we bring the lulav into the sukkah. We're different. We're distinct. We're interdependent. We contribute different things. But at the base of it, there is something that you can't measure. The sukkah is something that the sukkah says that the value of every yid, of every human being, of every yid, is such that you can't measure it. You can't measure it at all. It's a different concept. It's a different concept. On the deepest level of our souls, the sukkah idea resonates. On the subconscious levels. On the conscious levels of our souls, on the practical levels of our souls, on the daily levels of our function, the Lulav idea of unity resonates. And ideally, you want to join them together. So, Sukkot is a holiday. It's a special time. It's a time with a certain kind of an energy, a holy energy, a special energy. And it's a challenge and it's an opportunity. It really is. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity. It's a challenge because all of us know how difficult it is for us to figure out how to get along, to farkuchen, you understand, to overlook, to not see, to not notice, to not make it into an issue. And on the other hand, if we have that wisdom, if we have that maturity, if we can overlook, there's a Jew whose name is Rabbi Shmuel Lu, should live and be well. He's a contemporary of my father's. He's around the young age of 80, around that age. He's a healthy Baruch Hashem, but listen, if I'm getting older, my parents are getting older too. Even Rabbi Shane's got a white beard at this point. We're almost the same age, a few years apart. So when in yeshiva, I was a big buck and he was a little boy, and now we both have white beards. He has a bigger beard than I at this point. He's certainly a bigger rabbi than I am, a bigger chassid. So Rabbi Shmuel Lu tells the following story. There was, and he doesn't say a name, there was a rabbi in England who worked for what's called the United Synagogue. The United Synagogue it's the umbrella organization of all the shuls in England. They don't have Reform, Conservative, Orthodox in England. They have United Synagogue. 90% of the Jews in England are not religious. But if they go to a shul, they go to United Synagogue. And officially they're Orthodox. They have a mechitzah, they don't have a microphone. The rabbis are Orthodox, but the people who join these shuls are not necessarily religious people. So the standard is not particularly high, you understand? He was a rabbi who was very important to the United Synagogue organization, and he had a disagreement with the rebbe on an issue. I don't know what the issue was. I could speculate, but I don't know, and I don't want to speculate. And the issue that he had with the rebbe created a very, very deep feeling of dissent. He had been a friend of the rebbe's. He had visited the Rebbe many times. He had private audiences with the Rebbe. The Rebbe had collaborated with him on all kinds of projects in England. And now, because of an issue, a position that the Rebbe had taken, he was very disturbed. He felt like the position the Rebbe took undermined how he thought Jewish leadership should go. And it was a disappointment. A person, a very powerful man with a lot of influence, who had been a friend of the Rebbe's, now was angry. Really, he was not happy. So Rabbi Lu was in the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe asks him, what's going on with this rabbi? So Rabbi Lu says, the Rebbe knows what's going on, that the Rebbe took this position and he's not happy about it, and he's disenfranchised. He's distanced from Lubavitch. So the Rebbe says to Rabbi Lu, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. We disagree on one of them. There are 612 left. Go to him and say, let's collaborate. Let's work together on the things we agree about. We have this disagreement. That's fine. Let's find common ground and work on the things that we can work on together without you giving up your position and me giving up my position. Why does the fact that we disagree have to become personal? So Rabbi Lu is standing in the Rebbe's room, and he's feeling really bad. Why? Obviously, he's a chassid. He has great respect, great reverence, great love for the Rebbe. And the idea that a person would be angry at the Rebbe to the extent that he's not going to help Lubavitch anymore was really disturbing him. And here the Rebbe says, listen, go tell him, you know what, it's okay, you can disagree with me, but let's work on those projects and those things where we agree. So Rabbi Lu says to himself, the story happened 40 years ago, so he was 40, he was half his age, is thinking, as he's standing in front of the Rebbe, how wise, how mature, how humble of the Rebbe to not return the hate with hate. You know, he could have said, okay, you don't like me, I don't like you. You're not talking to me, I'm talking to you. And the Rebbe said, don't be silly. We have this disagreement, so we disagree. So we're not going to work on this project, but there's so many other things we can work on. So that was impressive enough. But Rabbi Lu was standing there in the Rebbe's room as the Rebbe is explaining to him this whole idea of 613 mitzvahs versus 600. Rabbi Lu says, I'm going to go to this rabbi and I'm going to sit down with him and I'm going to make him see the Rebbe's point of view. This agreement has to end. And as he's thinking this, the Rebbe says, do not try to change his mind. The Rebbe read his thoughts. Do not try to change his mind. You don't have to. Let's find common ground. And this is a real serious message of sukkahs. We know it in our homes, we know with our children, we know with our extended family. The things that create separation between one person and another are so petty. And there's sometimes they create such terrible divisions. I'm saying it because I know it. I'm saying it because it's real. I'm saying it because it's important. You know how it works. Oh, I'm ready to love you as soon as you're ready to love me. And then you'll say, sure, I'll love you as soon as you're ready to love me. So who's going to be the first one to take that initial step? So both of you stand with one leg off the ground and wait for the other guy to go down first. And that's how it stays. You have to work on the other, and you also have to look in the mirror. Take some personal responsibility. Just look at yourself and say, what can I do that will be positive? You wanted to say something before?
Roger, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was saying that, based on what you're saying, that the concept of the Lulav and the concept of the sukkah both calls for a disillusion of the ego.
In different ways, right.
In different ways. In the concept of the Lulav, the disillusion of the ego is for us to be humble enough to recognize our differences. And that we bring contribution and no one is more important than the other. And the concept of the sukkah is that we have no ego, so in so much that we recognize that we all are one and there's no difference between us.
Right, correct.
But you're saying that we bring the concept of the Lulav
into the
sukkah. So where is the cohesion there?
They're really complementing each other. They're not.
I would say it this way: the sukkah comes first because it's simpler. The lulav comes second because it's more sophisticated, but the sukkah comes third because it's more complete. In other words, as a person, the easiest way to get along is to see no differences. A more complicated way to get along is to recognize differences and to contribute. The ultimate unity is that you recognize differences and you all contribute, but then you find the point where we're all the same. I mean, in Chassidus gets very, very deep. Chassidus would say you want to bring the sukkah into your lulav. You want that in the differences we should experience it, how we're all equal. These are deep ideas. They're serious ideas. Practically, we got a couple of steps before we have other issues besides figuring out how to create cohesion between the sukkah and the lulav. But the point is, this is what sukkah is. The point is, this is a time that we can embrace. We have an opportunity to prioritize, being grown up rather than being children. That's really what it comes down to. This is a terrible joke. It's a really, really bad joke. Should I tell it?
They're ready for the joke. They're ready.
That was my way of warning you. Don't be offended. This couple comes to the rabbi, and they're tearing each other's hair out. They're going to kill each other. And they want a divorce. But they know that when you come to a rabbi, you want a divorce, the first thing the rabbi does is he stalls. He starts to give you go to this therapist, the other therapist. They wanted to convince the rabbi that in this particular case, there's no point in even trying. It's done. And the two of them agreed that they were going to present the rabbi a position that's going to say, this marriage has to end yesterday, and he's not going to, in any way, shape, or form, try to salvage the marriage. So the two of them come into the rabbi, and they're killing each other. And the rabbi says, she treats me like she's my mother, and she belittles me, and she puts me down, and she doesn't have any respect for me, and she doesn't have any value for anything that I believe in. And he says, my husband is a child, and a pig and a slob, and they can't live with him. And Anyway, they convinced the rabbi that this marriage was not even going to try and save. So he immediately gets together a Beis Din. Is to write a divorce, a legal divorce, is much more complicated than writing a ksuba, and they do it. They've divorced, finished. 9 months pass, and the couple comes back to the rabbi with their deed of divorce, and they tell the rabbi very sheepishly, with a significant sense of shame, we've been away. We've had an opportunity to think. We really want to give it another shot. We want to try again to salvage our marriage. Would you marry us? And the rabbi says, I don't get it. I've been in this business for 30 years. There's not a couple that's ever convinced me that I should agree to a divorce without trying to save the marriage, except for you. You convinced me. He's your mother. She's your mother, and she puts you down, and nothing you do is of value. And he's a pig, and he's a slob, and all the other things that she said about him. I don't get it. I don't understand. How will you guys even give it another shot? So she says, Rabbi, for both of us, it'll be a second marriage. For second marriages, we're okay for each other. Now, so that's a great joke, right? So let me tell you a story. I have, like Rabbi Shane, one of the trademarks of Chabad rabbis, they start out young. You don't become a rabbi at 35 or 40, you're a rabbi at 25. It's true. It's one of the secrets, it's one of the challenges of Lubavitch, and the secrets of Lubavitch is youth. So a guy grew up in Crown Heights. What does he know about life? It becomes a rabbi of a congregation. When you start out, most of the people in your shul are older than you. Eventually, you get a white beard, but you don't come out of the Chabad rabbi with a white beard. So he's a young Chabad upstart, and he's enjoying every new experience, to officiate at a wedding, to oversee a bris. But after a while, it's not all positive experiences. Some of the people you marry come to you 6, 7, 10, 12 years later, and they want to break the marriage, and it's very difficult. When you are involved with a family, they're like your children. It's very difficult. I don't know this experienced person. Describe the sadness of it all. And one of the things that he's learned is that people get divorced for the stupidest reasons. I mean, this joke about second marriage, what are you looking for? What? There's one thing that you're not going to get away from in the second marriage, and the third marriage, and the fourth marriage. That's who you are. And that's where most of the problems are. It's not the other person, it's you. And if you figure if you have a second marriage first time around, you live happily ever after. In other words, if you go into it, no, it's true. If you go into it in a mature way, in a wise way, so it's not about me, it's about us. It's not about seeing stars, it's about living together and creating together and accepting each other's faults and having your own faults accepted. So, and that's what the Lulav and the sukkah are. You grow up, just be big, not little. Not say, I'll be good if you'll be good. Say, I'll be good first, because good is right. It's really important stuff. It's important stuff. But to talk about it is wonderful. To do it, that's another story. Talk about joy. Zman Simchaseinu. Sukkah is the sign of joy. And joy is the same thing, really. Why is the same thing? Everybody knows. And everybody understands. Everybody knows, and everybody understands the value of positive thinking, right? Every psychologist, every therapist, every expert in the world will tell you that if you want a successful life, you want a productive life, be positive. But there's a catch. There's a very, very significant catch when you talk about joy, about being positive. And the catch is, you say to God, if you'll give me everything I need and want, I'll be happy. And God says to you, if you'll be happy, I'll give you everything you need and want. So you get into a war, stubborn, one Jew, another Jew. Yeah. You give me everything I want and I'll be happy. And the Rebbe says, no. You be happy and I'll give everything I want. This is not only true in our relationship with God, this is true in our lives. The thing about joy is that a person is not joyous because his life is good. A person is joyous so that his life should be good. In other words, joy is not an effect, it's a cause. It's a religious principle. It's a religious principle. You got to be happy. You got to be happy. You have to be happy. And by Chassidim, it's not just that you have a positive thought process, but that there is an actual effervescence, right? You meet a chassid. What's the trademark of a chassid? It's afrei l'charid. A happy person is a chassid. Children are sometimes happy. For adults to be happy is a challenge. Why? Because life is a challenge. And one of the symptoms of a Jew who has faith, of a human being who is connected to Chassidus, is that he has this joy. The joy that Chassidus teaches us, that Torah teaches us, that Sukkot teaches us. The Rambam, you should know there's 2 paragraphs of Rambam that you should read. They're in the laws of Sukkot, that he says that to be joyous in serving God is avodah gedolah. Avodah gedolah for the Israelis. It's a great work. And there's 2 translations of the words avodah gedolah. One is it's very difficult, and the other is very important. To be positive, to be joyous is not always easy, but to be joyous is unbelievably important. And the Rambam says incredibly powerful things about the need to be joy and the consequences, the cost of not being joyous. And again, the point is, let me give you an insight. And you remember that Mendel, Futterfass? You remember that Mendel? Rabbi Shane is a little younger than I mean, maybe he's so holy that he remembers. But when I was a child, there were a lot of big Chassidim around. There were Chassidim who lived in Russia. So on. But by the time I was old enough to appreciate them, they were gone. There were a lot of great Chabad personalities who passed away in the 60s and the 70s. I was born in 1965. So by the time I had wisdom to sit at these people's feet and observe them, my wife's grandfather was a great chassid, and this and them enough. He passed away in 1984, but he lived in France. He didn't live here, so I didn't see him, I didn't watch him. The only chassid from that generation who we knew, Rabbi Shane and I, that we observed and learned from was a chassid by the name of Reb Mendel Futterfass. He passed away in 1995. Reb Mendel Futterfass buried 8 of 10 children. Okay? He was survived by a son. He buried 9 of 10 children. He was survived by 1 son. Look for excuses to be miserable. He had a library of books. His life was hell. He spent close to 20 years separated from his wife and his family. They were out of Russia and he was in Siberia. They left Russia and he was stuck in Siberia. And then when he came out of Siberia, it took him another decade to get out of the country to be reunited with his family. They beat the life out of him. They beat him to pulp in prison. Anyway, you've never in your life seen a happier person. Reb Mendel used to travel all over the world. He traveled to raise money for Russian Jews. This was one of the things that he did. Officially he was a mashpia in yeshiva. He was involved with the Bacham yeshiva, but he would take off several months a year and he would travel from September to December. He traveled. He would visit California, where I spent a lot of years. He would visit Australia. And wherever he went, there'd be a Fabrengen, an event like this, and nobody would miss it. Because you just laughed from the beginning of the night to the end. He just made jokes. He was just the funniest fellow. He was just very, very funny and very, very happy. And when you listened to him, you had to remind yourself that this wasn't just a comedian. This was a serious Jew who wouldn't desecrate the Shabbos in Siberia if he would lose his life, who wouldn't eat chametz on Pesach, and he would starve to death. You're talking about a real serious Jew. And he oozed, he radiated what we call Hasidic joy. He was just a Chassid. And nothing could break that. And he had such a terrible life. He had so many reasons to be unhappy. His name was Menachem Mendel ben Menachem Mendel. He was named after his own father. He didn't know his father. His father died when his mother was pregnant with him. You understand? It wasn't like this guy had a good childhood. But he was a chassid. And he taught the level of joy by example, which is really the only way to teach it. And the lesson of joy, the message of joy, the message of Zman Simchaseinu, that Sukkot is a time of joy, is a very simple one. You don't need a reason to be joyous, period. You don't need a reason to be joyous. Why? You live in God's world. It's enough. You exist. That's reason enough. What about the challenges of life? The challenges of life challenge joy. But if they defeat joy, they've defeated you. In other words, being sad, being unhappy, right? There's not a pessimist in the world who calls himself a pessimist. What do pessimists call themselves? Realists. And what? An optimist is a dreamer. The reality is that pessimism is inhibiting and it's self-destructive. Negativity, of course it's justified, but it's not good. Joy is a challenge to people, to Jews, and to Chassidim. And it's Zman Simchaseinu means this is a season where you can inspire yourself with a spirit of optimism and joy and carry it for the year. That you're going to be positive about life. Life is always going to give us what life gives us. We don't get to fill out a request invoice, so we can fill out as many as we want. The one who's at the receiving end of those invoices is going to do whatever he wishes. But this is a very basic and serious point in life and in Chassidus that a person's got to be positive about his life. Sameach, whatever it is, whatever God gives you, be happy about it. Why? It's right. And the reality is that this simcha is a basis for many brachas, for many miracles. And even if the joy doesn't bring any blessings and doesn't bring any miracles, the joy is a miracle. The joy is a blessing. There's a film that came out. You watched The Living Torah, I would imagine. Yeah, you watched The Living Torah, yeah? So last month, there was this incredible interview with a doctor. He's a high-risk pediatric specialist. He's probably 10 years older than I. He's around 60. People know him. But he tells the most remarkable story. That he met the Rebbe in the 1980s. In the 1980s, the Rebbe did not meet people privately because there were too many people to meet, not enough hours in a day. But the Rebbe made him an exception because of his kibbutz, the way he honored his father. So the Rebbe let him. So the Rebbe told him, "You can come to me anytime you wish, and I'll talk to you." So he was then. This is 30 years ago. So he was around 30. Wise enough to take advantage of it. So you saw the film. So he says he came to the Rebbe, discussed many things. He discussed his marriage, and how to get along with his wife. But the issue which he discussed above all else was children suffering. He was a doctor who was dealing with very sick children, and it was killing him. How could God do this to children? And he came to the Rebbe, and he protested. He said, "Explain it to me. I want to understand." And the Rebbe spent a lot of time with this person. The interview is 2 or 3 minutes. I want to sit with this guy. You should bring him. And plus, let him tell. He plus has so much wisdom. The Rebbe spent time with this man, helping him deal with something as serious and real as suffering. But what he says is the Rebbe told him that God is good. We don't understand how it's good because we only have a part of the picture. And if we saw the whole picture, we'd appreciate it all. And then the Rebbe told him these words. This is a home run. This is something you have to remember. The worst thing is anger. If you get angry with God, you make it impossible for the miracle to happen. Don't get angry. In other words, you're a doctor dealing with somebody else's sick child, and it's eating you up. Justly, very justly. Don't get angry, the Rebbe says, because if you get angry, you make it impossible for God to perform His miracle. You push Him away. Celebrate, appreciate the opportunity that you have to help this person and be a conduit for the miracle. And if you don't get angry with God, you make it possible for the miracle to happen. This is what the Rebbe told him. This is interesting because I always thought that being angry with God is okay. Don't be angry with your wife, but you be angry with God because God can take it. But here, don't be. Why? Well, Hashem is insulted. If you're angry with God, you've insulted Him and His feelings have been hurt. You're angry with me, I'm angry with you. I mean, come on. Why should you be angry with God? Because angry with God really is not being angry with God. It's distancing Him. He's not present. When you're angry with God, you're saying you're not here. So you're not letting Him be here. It's not because you're displaying an inappropriate response, so God is going to treat you the way you're treating Him. We create a framework for blessings of God, right? We all want God in our life. To me, God in my life is peace, is serenity, is being in a good mood. To me, God in my life is the ability for someone to upset me and me not get upset. It's so easy to say, so impossible to do, so much a part of who we are as human beings. Of course, it's real. That's Hashem. Hashem is not just there when someone is sick. Hashem is in every little detail. And the foundation, the basis for that relationship, the basis for that relationship is joy. Joy is a kli. It says in the Chazal, we're now sitting at a Fabrengen, which is called Simchas Beis Hashiyeva. This is the name of this evening, right? The joy of drawing the water in the Beis Hamikdash. So this is called the joy of drawing. Simchas Beis Hashiyeva, the joy of drawing. So there's an argument between the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud says we celebrate drawing water. What's the big deal? Another discussion. The Jerusalem Talmud says that it was the joy of drawing Ruach HaKodesh, prophecy, divine inspiration. People got together, they sang and danced, and opened themselves up to divine inspiration. Think about it. It's true, it's real, it's emes, it's mamish emes. So l'chaim v'levracha, Yiddishkeit is not up in the sky. It's very, very much us in our lives. We should see how Torah and mitzvahs on a daily level gives us the tools to be Pashat, the human being with Eibishter wants. We should learn these lessons. We should try and live these lessons. We should accept our imperfections, our inexactitude. We can accept our inactitude. I don't know about. We got to act. And we should have a successful year and a blessed year. I mean, should have nachas from your children and your grandchildren and from yourself and from your spouses. Arichas everybody. L'chaim v'levracha.
L'chaim.